when we imagine a world without domestic violence, one where children born tomorrow never witness or experience abuse, we should ask ourselves, what do we see? What does this world look like?
Our communities of color, women and non-binary folks have access to resources and also are receiving investment from state and local institutions into the health of our communities.
Education and awareness, while very important and crucial, cannot end domestic violence alone. We must also shift the attitudes and behaviors that perpetuate this violence and make sure that our communities are vibrant, safe, healthy places for everyone.
It's culture change. We have to get to the root cause of why we even have intimate partner violence.
We cannot end domestic violence until we end oppression in all its forms.
Equal access to education, things like healthy food, resources, healthcare, parks, and green spaces will not only help build healthy communities, but research tells us it will help prevent domestic violence before it has a chance to start.
The COVID-19 pandemic has intensified many of the factors that increase the likelihood domestic violence will occur, including economic insecurity, poverty, unemployment, and social isolation.
Communities of color have been severely impacted by COVID-19, not just with disproportionate number of cases, but also by the economic impact. The reality is that our communities were in crisis before the pandemic had happened. Not enough jobs that pay a living wage, a serious lack of affordable housing, issues around food insecurity and childcare.
We want to engage individuals that are facing those challenges so that they not only face that challenge, but they can see how they're an important part of the community. I think that's going to make a difference in domestic violence because we're committed to engaging people and to ensuring that they have a voice in their community.
The fact that domestic violence, economic violence, state violence are huge systems impacting the lives of women of color, non-binary folks in a way that does not allow them to be whole, that takes away their humanity. What we're trying to do is get in front of that. How do we use strategies of prevention? How do we use alternative strategies than just the systems that are out here that say they're here for us, whether it's health and human services, whether it's schools? What is it that we want for our communities? What is it we want for our own lives? What do we want for our families?
Society and especially our government does not actually recognize the humanity of folks. They don't recognize the fact that our young people don't have reliable housing, clean water, electricity, technology, internet access, and they are not food secure.
We need to support the leadership of community-based organizations to set the policy agenda and through community-led solutions.
Our goal is to serve all different types of youth and people of color within our community, especially when it comes to education, to make sure people get equitable education and resources. Because we come from a time where people of my descent couldn't even get a valid education and weren't allowed to be educated.
Why is it such a struggle to actually care about our students enough to be able to fund them the resources that they need, where there's mental health, where there is even after school programming? We're not funded for that. Knowing that there is a whole bunch of research and data that actually says this is helpful to the Black and brown students in this community, but yet we still, there's a gap.
When we think about the public education system and when we think about the state takeover of Providence, there's this verbal commitment to anti-racist practices, ideologies, pedagogy, but it's not a commitment through sort of tangible actions. How do you distinguish between sort of performative sort of allyship and actual real sort of organizing and building and systems and institutional change?
We know historically young folks have always contributed to the biggest movements, civil rights movements in our lifetimes.
We're working every day to advocate for better futures for other generations, advocating for certain bills for education. It's tough because I'm I need this now. Why is it taking so long for you to actually do something that is necessary? It's a really tough time just waiting, but sometimes waiting is worth it.
Not all problems can be solved in a day or a minute. It involves dialogue and it involves a commitment, and we often have discussions about what can we do differently that will help the community more. And that is the question, that is the hope that we have, that things can improve for people.
It's about building a shared vision, helping communities have more collective power. It takes a lot of unlearning and decentering of like one's self and one's whiteness, in my case, to be part of what that change is.
Sometimes we forget that we're building together and we're working for the same things and working towards the same things. We need to work on ourselves together.
We know that it's not easy work. Organizations have different cultures and different ways to communicate, but we have to take a stand.
There's this assumption that leadership looks one way, and it doesn't. When I think about leadership, I think about folks who are walking down the street. I think about women who I went to school with. I think about all of us lifting up and working with the person next to us. And we do that through lending circles. We do that through mutual aid work. We do that through spiritual healing work. How do we collectively begin to invest in each other? How do we heal with one another? How do we redefine what leadership looks like? Not patriarchy. We are redefining a set of systems that are oppressive and saying, it ain't gonna work. It needs to look different, and we have alternative strategies.
While we're living through times of intense hardship and suffering for so many of us, this is also a time of emergence and resilience, of reimagining what's possible.
During the pandemic, we've really seen all of the ways that the brilliance and the love and the depth of relationships in our community have shown up across our communities, and also in the work that we've done and stepping up to care for each other. Our communities are inherently worthy and deserve dignity, and if there's one thing this pandemic has done is really demanded space for conversations around alternative solutions.
Change is actually happening. Though it's very slow and it took very long for it to happen, it's still happening. I'm very hopeful because in times of despair and in times of desperation, you can only think of hope.
The people who came before us, they did so much work to get us all to this point, and then now we're carrying it forward into the times that we're living in. What I'm excited about is evolving out loud, like learning and growing and sharing what that looks like.
Our partners are working to transform the conditions in our communities that contribute to domestic violence in order to build an equitable and peaceful world.
It is a world where my grandchildren and all children of the world never witness domestic violence. A world where men's violence against women is not tolerated, and a world where everyone is safe and every person can thrive. And this is absolutely possible.